Nobody remembered what humans actually looked like anymore. The paintings in the memorial hall showed tall figures with soft skin and strange round eyes. Some artists made them look peaceful. Others painted them as monsters with blood on their hands. After 1,000 years, truth had become legend, and legend had become whatever the powerful wanted it to be. Ambassador Rilla of the Fenari stood at the center of the Galactic Council chamber. Her blue feathers caught the light as she raised her arms to address the gathered representatives of 42 species. Today we mark 1,000 years since the Great Calamity, she announced. 1,000 years since humanity burned itself to ash. The holographic display behind her flickered to life. Images of Earth appeared, a blue and green world covered in white clouds. Then came the fire, the cities crumbling, the ships falling from orbit, the silence that followed. Let their fate remind us all, Rilla continued. Expansion without wisdom leads to destruction. Ambition without restraint leads to extinction. The council members nodded their various heads. The Krell delegation, massive armored beings with 4 arms, watched with expressions that might have been satisfaction. The Pelians, thin and gray-skinned, kept their faces carefully blank. The Fenari wiped tears from their large eyes. Humans have been dead for 1,000 years. Everyone knew this. Everyone accepted this. Council Speaker Dorith, an ancient Pelian with wrinkled gray skin and clouded eyes, sat in his elevated chair above the assembly. He had held his position for 60 years, longer than any speaker before him. He knew secrets that would shatter this perfect memorial ceremony. But secrets were meant to stay buried. The memorial concludes, Dorith announced in his thin, reedy voice. May we never forget the lessons of the Great Calamity. The representatives began to rise from their seats. Conversation started. Trade deals were discussed. Territorial disputes were quietly negotiated. The death of an entire species had become just another political event, a useful story to tell when convenient. Then the alarm started. Red lights flashed across the council chamber. The great windows that looked out into space suddenly filled with activity as defense platforms rotated toward something approaching station terminus. What is happening? Demanded the Krell ambassador, a warrior called Bragg who had earned his position through decades of military service. A communication officer, a small Fenari with trembling feathers, appeared on the main display. Her voice shook as she spoke. Unidentified vessel approaching from the dead zones. It should not be possible. Nothing has come from that region in 1,000 years. Destroy it, Bragg ordered immediately. Wait, Speaker Dorith said. The word came out too quickly, almost panicked. He forced calm into his voice. What signal does it broadcast? The communication officer checked her instruments. Her feathers went flat against her body, a sign of absolute shock among her species. Human origin, she whispered. The transponder identifies as human origin. Silence fell over the council chamber. 42 species stared at the display, showing a single ship approaching through the darkness of space. It was small compared to the massive vessels of the Krell fleet or the elegant cruisers of the Fenari Navy. But it moved with purpose, steady and unafraid. That is impossible, Ambassador Rilla said. Humans are extinct. Clearly, a Pelian scientist named Aldros said slowly. Someone did not inform the ship. The vessel drew closer. Its hull was scarred and worn, marked by what looked like decades of harsh radiation and cosmic debris. But its engines burned steady and its course never wavered. This is a trick, Bragg growled. Some pirates using old technology to confuse us. Destroy it now. If it is a trick, we will learn nothing by destroying it, Dorith countered. If it is not a trick, he did not finish the sentence. If it was not a trick, everything changed. The ship requested docking permission. The council debated for 3 hours. The Krell wanted it destroyed. The Fenari wanted to study it. The Pelians wanted to pretend it did not exist. In the end, curiosity won over fear. The vessel called Patience docked at station terminus. Its airlock opened with a hiss of recycled atmosphere. The waiting crowd of soldiers, scientists, and politicians held their breath. 3 figures emerged. They were shorter than the old painting suggested. Their skin ranged from dark brown to pale pink. They had 2 arms, 2 legs, flat faces with small noses, and those strange round eyes the artists had captured. They wore simple gray uniforms marked with symbols no one had seen in a millennium. The leader was an old woman with white hair cut short against her skull. Deep lines marked her face, evidence of a long and difficult life. But her eyes were sharp and clear, and she walked without fear into a room full of beings who should have been her enemies. "I am Captain Nadia Okonkwo," she said in perfect galactic standard. "We have traveled very far to stand before you today." Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The old woman smiled, and there was something sad in that smile, something ancient and patient and utterly unbroken. "We know what you did to our ancestors," she said. "We know about the plague. We know about the bombardment. We know about the lies you told for 1,000 years." Speaker Dorith gripped his chair so tightly his gray knuckles went white. "We did not come for revenge," Captain Okonkwo continued. "We came for truth, and we came to show you what humanity became while you thought we were dead." Behind her, through the airlock windows, more lights appeared in the darkness. Dozens of them, then hundreds. The humans had returned, and they had not come alone. Fear has a smell. Every species in the galaxy produces it differently, but the result is always the same. A chemical signal that screams danger, run, hide. Station Terminus stank of fear. Captain Nadia Okonkwo noticed it the moment she stepped into the council chamber. The Fenari delegation had their feathers pressed flat. The Pelions stood frozen like statues. Even the mighty Krell, warriors who conquered 100 worlds, shifted nervously in their armored skin. They were afraid of her. Afraid of 3 humans in worn gray uniforms. Good, she thought. Let them feel what our ancestors felt. "You claim to be human," Speaker Dorith said from his elevated chair. "But humanity died in the Great Calamity. This is historical fact. History is written by survivors," Nadia replied. "We survived. We have a different story to tell." Behind her stood Dr. Samuel Reyes, a man in his 40s with tired eyes and gentle hands. He carried a data tablet containing archives that his family had protected for generations. Beside him was Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka, younger and harder, her hand never far from the weapon at her hip. "Tell us then," Ambassador Rillis said. The Fenari's voice trembled slightly. "Tell us where you have been hiding for 1,000 years." Nadia looked at the gathered representatives. 42 species. Trillions of lives across thousands of worlds. They had built their civilization on the grave of humanity. "When the plague came," Nadia began, "our ancestors knew it was not natural. The sickness targeted human biology specifically. It killed no other species. Only us." Murmurs spread through the chamber. The official history claimed the plague was a human-created weapon that backfired. A tragic accident of their own making. "They tried to flee," Nadia continued. "But every route was blocked. Every jump point was guarded. And then came the Mercy bombardments." She let that phrase hang in the air. Mercy bombardments. The words the old records used to describe the orbital strikes that turned human cities into glass. A Pelian scientist named Aldris saw what was happening. She knew the truth. She risked everything to save a single colony ship, giving them coordinates to a place no one would look. A world so harsh, so deadly, that no one believed anything could survive there. Dr. Reyes stepped forward and activated his tablet. A holographic image appeared, showing a planet wrapped in violent storms and bathed in radiation. "We call it refuge," he said, though that name is somewhat ironic. The radiation would kill most species within hours. The atmosphere is toxic. The native life forms are large, aggressive, and constantly hungry. "Then how did you survive?" demanded Bragg, the Krell ambassador. "We almost did not," Nadia admitted. "The first 3 generations nearly went extinct. But humans are stubborn creatures. We learned. We adapted. We built." Lieutenant Tanaka spoke for the first time. Her voice was cold and precise. "The radiation became a power source. The toxic atmosphere became medicine. The predators became our teachers. Everything that tried to kill us made us stronger. The council members exchanged glances. This was not the story they expected. They expected threats, demands, accusations. Instead, they received a simple history lesson. Why come back now? Speaker Dorth asked. His voice was carefully controlled, but Nadia saw the fear behind his eyes. He knew what was coming. For 60 years, we have listened to your broadcast, Nadia said. We learned your languages. We studied your politics. We watched your worlds fail. She gestured, and new images appeared. Dying planets, collapsing ecosystems, declining populations across dozens of species. The galaxy is sick, Nadia said. Your greatest scientists cannot explain it. Your best engineers cannot fix it. Worlds that thrive for millennia are becoming dust. Ambassador Rilla nodded slowly. This was known, though rarely discussed openly. Something was wrong with the galaxy itself, and no one understood why. We came back because we can help, Nadia said. On Refuge, we learned things no other species has learned. We developed technologies that exist nowhere else. Not weapons, not war machines, tools for healing, tools for rebuilding. Bragg laughed, a harsh sound from his massive chest. You expect us to believe you traveled across the galaxy to help the species that murdered your people? Nadia turned to face him directly. The Krell ambassador towered over her, 3 times her weight and covered in natural armor. She looked up at him without flinching. What we expect does not matter, she said. What we offer does. The question is whether you are wise enough to accept it. In the back of the chamber, a young Finari journalist named Sin recorded everything. She had spent her career investigating old mysteries and buried secrets. Something about the official history of the Great Calamity had never made sense to her. Now, watching these impossible humans stand before the council, she understood why. The truth had been hidden, but truths do not stay buried forever. Later that night, Sin accessed classified archives that her press credentials should not have opened. She found records that contradicted the official story. Communications between Krell commanders and Pelian officials. Orders given and crimes committed. She found evidence of genocide, and she began to broadcast it to the entire galaxy. Within hours, everything changed. The memorial celebration became a trial. The dead species became witnesses. And 3 humans from a death world stood at the center of a storm that would reshape civilization itself. Captain Okonkwo watched the chaos spread through the council with something that might have been satisfaction. They called us extinct, she said quietly to Dr. Reyes. They should have called us patient. The truth spread like fire through dry grass. Sen's broadcast reached 1 billion screens within the first hour. By the second hour, governments were issuing denials. By the third hour, riots had started on 17 worlds. The evidence was simple and damning. Communications between Krell High Command and Pelian leadership dated exactly 1,003 years ago. Plans for a plague engineered to target human biology. Schedules for bombardments disguised as mercy killings. Lists of species bribed to look away. The galaxy had not lost humanity. The galaxy had murdered humanity. In the council chamber, chaos ruled. Representatives screamed at each other. Old alliances crumbled in minutes. The Krell ambassador, Bragg, stood surrounded by his guards while delegates from a dozen species demanded answers he could not give. These records are forgeries, Bragg insisted. Human tricks designed to cause division. The encryption signatures are genuine, a Pelian scientist announced. She had spent 3 hours analyzing the data. Her voice was hollow with shock. These communications are real. Our ancestors ordered a genocide. Speaker Dorth had not moved from his chair. His gray face showed nothing, but his hands trembled slightly. He had known this moment would come eventually. He had simply hoped it would come after his death. Dr. Samuel Reyes stood before the assembly, calmly presenting document after document. His voice never rose, never wavered. He spoke like a teacher explaining simple facts to slow students. The plague was developed in a joint laboratory on Krell Prime, he explained. Pelian scientists designed the biological component. Krell engineers built the delivery system. The infection was released simultaneously on 47 human worlds. Images appeared on the display. Medical records, Death counts. Estimates of human dead in the first wave alone, 3 billion. When survivors tried to evacuate, they found the jump points blocked by Krell warships. The official explanation was quarantine enforcement. The real purpose was to ensure no witnesses escaped. Lieutenant Tanaka stepped forward with military records, ship movements, ammunition expenditures, target lists. The Mercy bombardments were not mercy, she said flatly. They were cleanup operations. Every human settlement large enough to detect was destroyed from orbit. The Krell claimed they were preventing the plague from spreading. They were actually destroying evidence. Ambassador Rilla of the Fenari wept openly. We did not know, she said. The Fenari were not part of this. We grieved for humanity. We mourned. Your grief was genuine, Captain Okonkwo acknowledged. But your government accepted the territory that belonged to human colonies. Your merchants profited from the resources we left behind. Ignorance does not equal innocence. The Fenari ambassador had no response to that. Why? Someone finally asked. A small delegate from a minor species, barely noticed in normal sessions. Why would anyone do this? Okonkwo turned to Speaker Dorith. Perhaps the speaker can explain. His grandmother was one of the architects of the plan. Every eye in the chamber focused on the ancient Pelion. Dorith remained still for a long moment. Then, slowly, he rose from his chair. Humanity was a threat, he said. His voice was calm, almost peaceful. Not because of your weapons or your military. Those we could have handled. You were a threat because of your potential. He walked down from his elevated platform, moving among the delegates like a ghost. In 200 years, humans went from a single planet to 100 colonies. In another century, you would have reached 1,000. Your population was exploding. Your technology was advancing faster than any species in recorded history. You were young, aggressive, unpredictable. He stopped before Okonkwo, looking down at her with ancient eyes. The council calculated your growth rate. In 500 years, humans would have outnumbered every other species combined. In 1,000 years, you would have ruled the galaxy. Not through conquest, through simple mathematics. We would have become minorities in our own civilizations. So you chose murder, Okonkwo said. We chose survival, Dorith replied. We chose to remove a threat before it consumed us all. The chamber erupted again. Species that had never agreed on anything united in their outrage. The Krell found themselves isolated, their allies suddenly remembering old grievances. The Krell Dominion stands by its actions, Bragg announced defiantly. The galaxy is better without the human plague. We would do it again. Then you will answer for it, Okonkwo said. Not to us. To them. She pointed at the representatives around her. The Fenari, the minor species, the scientists and merchants and diplomats who had lived their entire lives believing a comfortable lie. We did not come for revenge, Okonkwo repeated. But justice is not the same as revenge. Let the galaxy decide what justice means. Outside the station, more ships arrived. Not human ships this time. Fenari vessels. Ships from the minor species. Even some Krell cruisers, their commanders refusing orders from a government they no longer trusted. The Krell Dominion's fleet held position, weapons armed, waiting for commands that might never come. And in his ruined authority, Speaker Dorith smiled a small, bitter smile. The secret he had protected for 60 years was finally exposed. The edifice built on human bones was finally crumbling. But he still had one final card to play. One last weapon hidden for exactly this moment. If the truth was going to destroy everything he had built, then the truth would destroy everything else as well. Everyone expected Captain Okonkwo to be angry. They expected threats, demands for territory, calls for war. After all, her species had been hunted to near extinction. Her ancestors had been burned alive in their homes. 1,000 years of suffering demanded payment in blood. Instead, she told them a story. When our colony ship reached refuge, Okonkwo said the first generation wanted to die. The radiation was unbearable. The storms never stopped. The creatures that lived there saw us as food. We had no right to survive. The council chamber had grown quiet. Even Ambassador Bragg of the Krell stood still, listening despite himself. The second generation was angry. They wanted to build weapons. They wanted to return and burn the galaxy for what it had done. Their rage was righteous. Their pain was real. Okonkwo walked slowly among the delegates, meeting eyes from a dozen different species. The third generation learned something different. They learned that anger is a fire. It can keep you warm, or it can burn down your house. They chose to build instead of destroy. They chose to adapt instead of fight. Dr. Reyes activated the holographic display. Images appeared showing impossible things. Forests growing in toxic soil. Cities built to withstand constant radiation. Creatures that should have been predators living alongside human children. We turned the radiation into power, Reyes explained. We processed the poison atmosphere into medicine. We studied the local life forms and learned their secrets. Everything that tried to kill us became a teacher. Lieutenant Tanaka stepped forward with more images. Ships unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Not sleek warships or massive cargo haulers. Something else entirely. Refuge taught us patience, Tanaka said. It taught us that survival is not about defeating your enemies. It is about outlasting them. About growing stronger while they grow weaker. She pointed to the ships in the display. These are not weapons. These are arcs. Terraforming vessels. Medical ships. Each one carries technology that can heal dying worlds. We have 50 of them hidden in the dead zones. We brought them here to help. The silence stretched for a long moment. Help? Ambassador Rilla finally asked. You can't help us? After everything we did, what your ancestors did, Okonkwo corrected gently. You were not there. You did not give the orders. You inherited a lie, not a crime. She turned to face the Krell delegation directly. On Refuge, we found something unexpected. A small Krell ship had also fled the galaxy during the chaos of the genocide. There were soldiers who refused orders to bomb civilian targets. They escaped and found their way to our world by accident. Bragg's armored face showed no expression, but his four hands tightened into fists. Their descendants live among us now, Krell and human, working side by side on a world that should have killed both. Your grandmother, Ambassador Bragg, was among them. Her name was Cora. She taught our children to fight. The massive Krell warrior said nothing, but something changed in his posture. The aggressive certainty faded, replaced by something that might have been doubt. We are not here for revenge, Okonkwo said. We watched your broadcasts for 60 years. We saw your worlds dying. We saw your populations declining. We saw the plagues and the famines and the wars. The galaxy is sick and no one understands why. She gestured at the gathered delegates. We understand. The same technology that created the plague that killed humans was used in other ways. Biological weapons deployed in secret wars. Genetic modifications that spread from species to species. The galaxy is poisoned by its own cruelty. Dr. Reyes nodded grimly. Our scientists have studied the data. The damage is reversible, but only with technology that no one else has developed. We spent 1,000 years learning to heal a poisoned world. Now we offer to heal yours. At what price? Dorith asked from his position at the edge of the chamber. What do humans want in return? Okonkwo smiled slightly. Nothing. We want nothing you would not freely give. We want recognition. We want our history remembered truthfully. We want a seat at this council so that no species can ever be erased again. And if we refuse, Bragg demanded, though his voice had lost its earlier aggression, then we return to Refuge and wait another 1,000 years. We have learned patience, Ambassador. We can wait as long as necessary. Outside the station, the standoff continued. Krell warships faced a mixed fleet of vessels from a dozen species. No one had fired yet. No one wanted to be the first. Then, slowly, one of the Krell cruisers broke formation. It moved away from the battle line and positioned itself between the fleet and the human ships. This is Commander Tor of the Krell Vessel Remembrance, a voice announced over open channels. My great-grandmother was named Cora. She refused to bomb civilians 1,000 years ago. I refuse now. More ships followed. Then more. The Krell fleet fractured as commanders chose their own conscience over their government's orders. Ambassador Bragg watched his military dissolve with something that might have been relief. "It seems," he said slowly, "that peace has been chosen for us." Captain Okonkwo extended her hand, a human gesture of friendship that she knew the Krell would not understand. But she offered anyway. "Peace is never chosen for us," she said. "It is always a decision we make ourselves. Every day, every moment." Bragg stared at the hand for a long moment. Then, with movements that seemed to cost him great effort, he reached out and took it. And for the first time in 1,000 years, human and Krell stood together instead of apart. Speaker Dorith had one rule that had kept him alive for 120 years: always have an escape plan. He walked through the maintenance corridors of Station Terminus while the galaxy celebrated above him. Peace had been declared. The Krell military had stood down. Representatives from 42 species were drafting agreements that would reshape civilization. Everyone was so busy looking at the future that no one was watching the past. Dorith knew where the bodies were buried because he had buried most of them himself. The control room was hidden deep in the station's core, behind doors that officially did not exist. It had been built 1,000 years ago, during the original construction, by engineers who understood that secrets needed protection. His grandmother had designed it. The weapon it contained was her greatest achievement. "Authorization, Dorith Prime," he said to the empty room. "Activate protocol last light." The systems hummed to life. Screens flickered on, showing targeting data that had been programmed before Dorith was born. The weapon was simple in concept: a cascade failure that would destroy Station Terminus and everything within 10,000 kilometers. Humans, aliens, evidence. All of it would be erased. Dorith settled into the command chair with something like peace. He had lived long enough. The legacy he had protected was already destroyed, but he could still deny his enemies their victory. "The weapon will reach full power in 15 minutes, the computer announced. "Evacuation is recommended." Dorith laughed quietly. There would be no evacuation. Above him, in the council chamber, the celebration continued. Ambassador Rilla was composing poetry about the dawn of a new age. Bragg was in deep conversation with his former enemies, discussing trade routes and cultural exchanges. The journalist was interviewing Captain Okonkwo for a galaxy-wide broadcast. Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka was not celebrating. She stood at a security console, frowning at readings that made no sense. Power was flowing to sections of the station that should have been empty. Heat signatures were appearing in areas that had been cold for centuries. "Something is wrong," she said to Dr. Reyes. Reyes looked up from his conversation with a Fenari scientist. "What kind of wrong?" "The dangerous kind." Tanaka moved through the corridors with military precision, following the power flows deeper into the station. Reyes hurried to keep up, his shorter legs struggling with her pace. They found the hidden door by accident. Tanaka's scanner detected an energy signature behind a wall that should have been solid. She found the seam, forced it open, and stepped into darkness. The control room lay before them. Dorith turned in his chair, unsurprised by the intrusion. "Ah," he said calmly. "The humans. Of course you would find me. Your species was always good at sniffing out secrets." "What is this?" Tanaka demanded, her weapon already drawn. "This is the end," Dorith replied. "In 12 minutes, this station will cease to exist. Everyone on it will die. Your species will return to extinction, where it belongs." Reyes stared at the screens, recognizing the weapon system for what it was. "You would kill thousands of innocent people." "I have already killed billions," Dorith said. "What is a few thousand more? The galaxy will survive. It always survives. And in time, it will forget you ever returned." Tanaka moved toward the controls, but Dorith raised a thin hand. "The system is locked to my biometrics. Kill me, and it activates immediately. The only way to stop it is to enter a code that I will never give." 10 minutes remained. In the council chamber, Captain Okonkwo felt something shift. The same instinct that had kept her alive on refuge for 60 years was screaming a warning. "Where's Lieutenant Tanaka?" she asked suddenly. "Send, check the internal sensors. Lower levels. Section that is not on any map." Okonkwo was running before the journalist finished speaking. 8 minutes. Tanaka circled Dorothy slowly, looking for options. The old Pelian watched her with amusement. Your ancestors were clever, he said. Clever enough to almost survive. But cleverness is not enough against those who are willing to sacrifice everything. You think this is sacrifice? Reyes asked. This is murder. It is history, Dorothy replied. The strong remove the weak. The established eliminate the disruptive. I am simply completing what my grandmother started. 6 minutes. Okonkwo burst through the hidden door, assessed the situation in a single glance, and walked calmly toward Dorothy. You cannot stop this, Dorothy told her. I have won. You have not won anything, Okonkwo said. You have simply proven everything we said about you is true. She sat down across from him, ignoring the countdown, ignoring the weapon, ignoring everything except the ancient Pelian before her. We knew this would happen, she said. We knew you would have a failsafe. We planned for it. Dorothy's confidence flickered. That is not possible. We spent 60 years listening to your broadcasts. We learned everything about this station, including the systems your grandmother built. For minutes, our ship is not just a transport, Okonkwo continued. It is a mobile computing platform. For the last hour, Lieutenant Tanaka has been uploading a virus into your system through maintenance connections you forgot existed. Dorothy looked at the screens. Numbers were changing. Connections were failing. The countdown flickered. Your weapon requires external power, Okonkwo said. We just cut it off. The countdown stopped at 2 minutes, 37 seconds. Dorothy stared at the frozen numbers. 1,000 years of secrets. A lifetime of planning. Defeated by patience and preparation. Ow, he whispered. On Refuge, we learned that the deadliest weapons are not the ones you build, Okonkwo said. They are the ones you understand. Guards arrived moments later. Dorothy was led away in silence, broken by the very species he had tried to destroy twice. And in the council chamber, the celebration resumed. But now it had a different tone. Now it felt earned. 1 year later, the dead moon bloomed with life. Gora, 7 had been a wasteland for 10,000 years. Its atmosphere had burned away in some ancient catastrophe. Its surface was cracked rock and frozen dust. The Fenari had used it for mining until the minerals ran out, then abandoned it to silence. Now grass grew in valleys that had never known water. Trees stretched toward a sky that held breathable air. Children from 12 species played together in gardens that should have been impossible. Captain Nadia Okonkwo walked through the terraformed landscape with careful steps. Her bones ached more than they had a year ago. The journey from Refuge had taken more from her than she had expected, but she would not have missed this moment for anything. The atmosphere processors are operating at full efficiency, Dr. Reyes reported. He looked younger than he had on station terminus, as if the work had given him new energy. We estimate full habitability within 3 years. And the medical programs? Spreading. Reyes smiled. The treatment for the genetic damage is working. Birth rates are increasing across 17 species. The galaxy is healing. Behind them, human ships worked alongside Fenari cruisers and Krell transports. Engineers from a dozen worlds collaborated on projects that would have been impossible a year ago. The old divisions were not gone, but they were fading. Ambassador Bragg approached with heavy steps. The massive Krell warrior had changed since the events on Station Terminus. He had resigned his position in the Dominion government and joined the reconstruction efforts as a simple laborer. His armor was scratched and worn from honest work. Captain, he said, his deep voice carrying respect that had been earned rather than demanded. The Krell remembrance is in orbit. Commander Tor sends her regards and a cargo of construction materials. Thank her for me, Okonkwo replied. And thank you, Bragg. Your people did not have to help us. My people tried to destroy you, Bragg said. This is not enough to repay that debt. But it is a beginning. A small figure ran toward them through the grass. A Fenari child, no more than 6 years old, with blue feathers that had not yet fully grown. She stopped before Okonkwo with wide, curious eyes. Are you the human captain? The child asked. I am. My mother says humans were dead, but then they came back. Is that true? Okonkwo knelt down, bringing herself to the child's eye level. Her old joints protested, but she ignored them. We were not dead, she said gently. We were just far away, and we came back because the galaxy needed help. Were you scared? Being so far away. Sometimes, but we had each other, and we had hope. The child considered this with the seriousness that only children possess. I'm glad you came back, she finally said. My grandfather says the galaxy was lonely without humans. Then she ran off to rejoin her friends, leaving Okonkwo with a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the artificial sunlight. Lieutenant Tanaka approached, her expression as serious as always. The War Crimes Tribunal has concluded. Speaker Dorith has been sentenced to confinement for the remainder of his life. The other conspirators are receiving similar judgments. No executions. None. The new council voted unanimously for mercy. Okonkwo nodded slowly. Good. We did not return to create more death. Let him watch us build what his grandmother tried to destroy. The journalist Sin appeared with her recording equipment. Over the past year, she had become the voice of the new era, documenting the transformation of the galaxy for billions of viewers. Captain, one final question for the anniversary broadcast. What do you want people to remember about this year? Okonkwo looked out at the terraformed moon, at the children playing, at the ships working together in orbit, at the galaxy slowly learning to be something better. I want them to remember that extinction is not always the end, she said. I want them to remember that 1,000 years of darkness can be followed by light. But most of all, I want them to remember that we had a choice. A choice. When we returned, we could have demanded revenge. We could have used our technology as a weapon instead of a gift. We could have become everything the old council feared we would become. She paused, letting the words settle. We chose differently. We chose to prove them wrong. Sen nodded, recording every word. And if someone wanted to follow that example, if they wanted to be like the humans who came back, Okonkwo smiled, and it was the same smile she had shown the council a year ago. Patient, unbroken, full of hope that had survived impossible odds. Then they should remember this. Survival is not about strength alone. It is about choosing who you want to be every day, even when the easier choice would be to give up or give in. On Refuge, we could have become monsters. We chose to become gardeners instead. She gestured at the moon around them, at the life growing from dead stone. This is what humanity does. We take broken things and make them grow. That is our gift to the galaxy. Not weapons, not war, growth. The broadcast ended. The celebration continued. Ships came and went, carrying hope between the stars. And on a moon that had been dead for 10,000 years, children of 100 species ran through gardens planted by human hands, laughing in a language that needed no translation. The galaxy had declared humanity extinct. Humanity had simply disagreed.